the 9th of July 2023 as I start recording this video, and I don't know yet what I intend to talk about. I have no plan. I just wanted to start by sharing my new documents. That's a new way of communicating. I try to share a lot of information in a short amount of time because I'm trying to improve my communicating skills, and this is the result of months, years of work and trying to communicate simply is part of the work. We are living difficult times, troubled times, and these two documents, Puritanism and Home Economics, they have helped me, and hopefully they can help others find more stability for themselves and in their immediate environment. So yeah. I intend to talk about psychology and negativity. I try to share good pieces of advice with others. The channel Psych2Go can be very useful to study one's own psychology. Then, of course, books are available about most psychological features, either problems or solutions or both. And also sometimes I listen to ASMR. There are great content creators in terms of psychological ASMR, which can help. So I will put the links probably. I am at this moment, so here we're early July 2023, I have decided to give up on intellectual complexity because I fail to communicate. I suffer probably from an excess of intellectualization, and now that I've understood this, I will try to slow down and to ease the hyper-functioning brain activity, one might say. And light can be enlightening, but if it's too intense, it's blinding, one might say. So I will try consciously to enlighten others and myself, maybe, without blinding them or blinding myself too much. That's why more simplicity can do a great deal. And if I'm honest, I would like to gain a status as a renowned scholar, because my world as an individual for the past 10 years is a world of books mostly. I interact very rarely with other human beings in social interactions, although I have improved a lot in 2023, and it has helped my mental health, and it has done me a whole lot of good, and it has taught me more humility, and it has helped me, and it has done me good, really. But my mental frame is nonetheless, for years and years, I have lived in the company of intellectuals, philosophers, scholars, through the mediation of books. And in a way, there's an aspect of me who would like to compete with them in the good sense, to try to earn a status and a reputation as a scholar, because this is my peer group in a way. And that's a sociological tendency to try to integrate and to reach a social group that one identifies with. But actually, most of the intelligent things which can be said in most fields have already been said. I have tried over the past few months to compete, not here in a good sense, not to compete against, but to try to reach competence in the field of Austrian economics. Mises, Hoppe, and the Austrian school, which is important to understand economics, but the great books, they have already been written by Mises, Rothbard, Hoppe, Hayek, etc. In philosophy, the great books have already been written by the Germans, mostly. And I could succeed to a certain extent, not because I do not have the intelligence of really quantitatively of genius intellectuals, but if I dedicated myself, maybe I could succeed in bringing contributions to various fields. But actually, I've realized that great theoretical scholarly work, they are of very few interests for a lot of people. Actually, the great scholarly works, they are of high interest, but only to a tiny minority of scholars. And I understand these works, the great scholarly works, in any topics. Sometimes it requires a lot of effort, but I can understand. Maybe the extremely complex ones, I don't know, in theoretical physics or molecular biology or whatever, but other than that, I can understand most scholarly works on most topics. But most ordinary people are not interested in this, and a lot of books which are being published, they are just popularization of already existing theoretical, scholarly, high-level works. So most books in economics, even sociobiology, psychology, they are just adaptation, reactualization, updates, upgrades sometimes of past great works. The core theoretical knowledge has already been produced, and it's very difficult to improve. So what I will try to do is to make knowledge accessible and interesting to the greatest amount of people. I have had the tendency, in a way I still do, to try to gather really complex knowledge to prove to others that in spite of my background or lack thereof, I'm not a complete clown. I can be serious intellectually in spite of my limitations, lack of formal education, limited IQ, no publication as such, etc. But Hans Hermann Hoppe somewhere wrote or said that what the libertarian needs, but actually not just the libertarians, but everyone, are intellectuals. So intellectuals who are in a way anti-intellectual. It's not a populist view, or the intellectuals, they are corrupt. Maybe they are, some of them. No, not personally, but corrupt in a sense that when you live in a world of pure abstractions, you are disconnected from the way most people experience reality. I'm not a populist, because I know that the theoretical aspect in any field is important, but being a scholar or an intellectual who writes books and make lectures for other scholars and other intellectuals, no. Also, I've understood that the socio-biological competition for status, it exists at all levels of society, and among very highly educated, very intelligent people, the search for status, recognition, competition, it exists like in the most primitive forms in the animal kingdom. It's more subtle, more refined, and more productive, one might say, most of the time, not always, but scholars, they are like chimpanzees, like everyone else. In a way, they seek to attain status within their group by showing off their skills. It's in a way, it's a competition, like in economics, in sports, in gangs, in politics. Yeah, it's a more subtle, more refined, and sometimes more useful form of competition, but it can be also detrimental when the intellectuals, they become really disconnected. And I have suffered from this. So I do not intend to be just a clown who make jokes, because I have a lot of respect and admiration for the work of the intellect. This is my background, one might say. Over the past 10 years, I have a tremendous admiration for really great intellectuals. But it has to be popularized without. Here there's a distinction in Latin between populus and vulgus, which gave popular and vulgar. The populus means the people. Vulgus means the common people, and sometimes in a derogatory sense it can mean the mob, the people as a mob, as a mass. So to popularize without being vulgar, in a sense of trying to elevate people, lowering down the standards of really the high, top quality intellectuals, philosophers, economists, biologists, psychologists, to lower down in order to make accessible, but without vulgarization, which would, how should I explain this? To find the proper compromise between intellectual rigor, seriousness for the good, so lowering down really the complexity and the abstractions of the scholars, while aiming at an elevation of ordinary people with an IQ and a culture which is by very definition limited, because they are in the means. So people with an average IQ, an average or below average IQ or below average culture or education, to make the great works of the great thinkers in all spheres, to make it accessible, interesting, intelligible, enlightening. Ideally, I encourage and I would like more and more people to be able to discover by themselves and to take more time to read good books, to make reading books interesting and appealing, because this is what I enjoy. Yeah. But also to make knowledge interesting, appealing, accessible. I will try to work on this as long as I can. But yeah. I've understood that this is what I intend to talk about vaguely. Negativity. Which can be, it's not just the philosophical terminology for evil, because negativity is not necessarily evil, but evil is negative, one might say. I will not talk too much about this, but I suffer probably from psychological problems as regards to Christianity, one might say. And in a way, I am partly a religious fanatics in a way, which is not good. I've already said this, expressed this differently at various times, but I have this, in a way, this Christian, fundamentalist Christian view, which is not necessarily always good, but that the sensuous world is kind of negative. So the world of senses and the flesh and hedonism and all this stuff, it's kind of negative. Really, the classical puritanical view that everything pleasant for the senses is negative. It's a temptation that has to be avoided, and I tend to agree with this. That's my personal I don't know, character in a way. I'm not very I mean, I can appreciate obviously sensuous pleasures, but I'm not very spontaneously, I'm not very hedonistically inclined. That's one of the reasons why I identify with the Anglo-Saxons. There are many other reasons, but one of them, which is not very not very prominent, but maybe it's important. The Anglo-Saxons usually they don't eat very good food compared to the Italians, the French, or the Chinese, or other highly refined Japanese, and even some Muslim countries, a highly refined food. The Anglo-Saxons, they don't really care, and I don't really care either. Yeah. So that's yeah. That's one of the reasons why on a lot of aspects I identify with the Anglo-Saxons more than with the French. Not only because of science and empiricism and etc., but also in the religious hedonistic aspect or lack thereof. Yeah, so I still have in a way this belief that in a way the sensuous world is kind of negative and has to be rejected, and that being moral and religious in a moral sense consists in struggling against the sensuous world, or not the sensuous world necessarily, but the sensuous inclinations. Yeah. So I have tried for many years, unconsciously and then consciously, to compensate by being hyper intellectual, like the Germans, the German thinkers. So I have tried to compensate, to invest in really the intellectual sphere, to a point which maybe sometimes has become really excessive, because I have had the tendencies to be so plunged into my ideas, what I say, the books that I've read, the videos, the ideas, that I have tended to disregard completely the physical world, which is not healthy in a sense if it's not balanced. Yeah, to be at war with the physical world, I'm not sure that it's a good way of solving problems. The physical plane of existence brings a lot of suffering, obviously, because it's the realm of pain, limitations, physical limitations, uh, tiredness, thirst, hunger, desires, etc., etc. But to be at war with your own body, I've understood this over the past few months. To be at war with your own body is not necessarily a healthy relationship and a healthy way of being in the world. That's why I try to be a minimalist, to eat decent food, to keep me healthy and intellectually performing, and to keep me healthy and balanced physically. And since I have taken care of my diet and of my physical health, not for its own sake, but for the sake of being more efficient and more productive intellectually, I have really improved a lot. It improves my mood just to go out a few dozens of minutes each day, to eat way better. I did not suffer from really junk food habits over the past year, but from lack of at some lack of decent diet, because I was not caring at all about my physical self. So yeah, to have a more appeased relationship with your body, knowing that in this world we have a body, that's how it is. Trying to discipline the body to be as indifferent as possible to the sensuous inclinations, to find satisfaction independently as much as possible from sensuous satisfaction. Of course, it's good, and in a sense, I intend to remain a Puritan in the anti-hedonistic way, because I'm not really interested as such. But of course, there are aspects which are pleasant, one might say. But yeah, I have had the temptations and the tendency to compensate, a form of existential suffering in terms of having a body with its limitations, with its problems, by being hyper intellectual. So my view of negativity here, it means kind of evil, or not necessarily, but negativity was and still significantly is in a way the classical, really fundamentalist religious views, that the temptations of the flesh, as they call this. There has to be a struggle against the temptations of the flesh, and I still do agree, but I have discovered over the past year, one might say, that the opposite, namely to be hyper intellectual and hyper rational and hyper focused on knowledge, it can be, and it has led me to become really negative as well, because to be in a way too intellectual, too abstract, too detached from the ordinary human experience, it has made me very negative, because I cannot relate, or I struggle to relate with others. I cannot communicate, and it has a dehumanizing aspect to consider things in terms of pure abstractions. It's not pleasant for others, and it leads to psychological problems. So formulated differently, I already said this, but I reformulate. I realized, I understood a few, I don't know, but a few weeks ago maybe, I realized that in a way the religions, most of them, or all of them maybe, they are about struggle, and each religion in the long run has been adapted to the people that has adopted the religion. Otherwise, if it wasn't adapted, the people would have changed. That's why, here, an example, Protestantism in Europe is the religion of the Nordic people, basically. There are a few exceptions, but broadly the distinction between the Protestants and the Catholics historically since the 16th century in Europe is strongly determined ethnically. Protestantism overwhelmingly appeals to Nordic Europeans, whereas Catholicism appeals more to Southern Europeans. I simplify, it's more complex, but yeah. And I'm sure that the various branches of Islam and Buddhism or Hinduism, etc., they express ethnic or ethno-cultural distinctions. Yeah. So yeah, that's just to illustrate that if a religion, in this case, classical Catholicism before the Reformation, if it did not appeal to sufficiently to the believers or the followers of the faith, then there was, and usually there is, a split. Protestantism, but even before Luther, there were already pre-Protestant movements in England, in Czechoslovakia, in what would now be called the Czech Republic, in France, etc. So eventually, a religion usually adapts and evolves with new denominations, new sects, sometimes new branches, to adapt to the ethno-cultural substratum to fit the population better. And each religion, in a way, has its own struggles, and there are religions for which really struggling against what they call the temptations of the flesh is the main struggle. But in a religion like Buddhism, it's in a way a very intellectual religion, and there is an emphasis, as far as I know, on the struggle against too much thought complexities, too much complexity, the mind which is being disturbed by too much thinking. So the struggles of the Buddhists are different from the struggles of other religions. It's a much more intellectual religion, and that's why it appeals to a lot of Westerners, usually white. There are a lot of white people who are vaguely Buddhists, because it's a religion which appeals to highly intelligent people, and it is Buddhism is a search for a peace of mind, whereas some other religions, the emphasis is more on the temptations of the biological sensuous temptations. Yeah. So each group of people has its own struggles in a way. And I have understood over the months that negativity can be, in my case, but it does not affect a lot of people because it requires high intelligence, and it's probably enhanced, not in a good sense necessarily by my autism, but to overthink, to have a mind or a brain which is in overdrive. Of course, it doesn't affect a lot of people because statistically it's very rare, but my problem with negativity has been, and still partly is, an excess of intellect, and that's why cleaning my room, doing ordinary tasks with my hand, with very few technological tools, going outside to just empty sometimes my mind, to exhaust my physical energy, so as to limit my brain activity. In a way, it has done me a lot of psychological good. Yeah. Statistically, I'm a freak because I'm very intelligent, but there are significant proportion of people who are significantly more intelligent than I am, quantitatively, but I am in the top 2 percentile for a population with an IQ of 100. So I am already kind of not a freak, but a statistical a rare occurrence just because of quantitative determination of intelligence. But I have spent the past more than 10 years of my life reading fanatically. So the two combined makes me really a freak in the good and the negative sense as well, I guess. Yeah. Um, I intend to keep working as long as I can, to share with others knowledge, but in a more interesting and accessible way. To find a compromise without compromising. That's why I intend to keep reading good books to really gather knowledge, but the scholarly works, they do not interest a lot of people. If I'm honest, I have the temptation, precisely, I would like to be a renowned scholar, to produce a great scholarly work, but precisely maybe we suffer. Here, Spengler in The Decline of the West talks about this. Maybe Western civilization suffers from this kind of pathology, namely the scholarly type. We suffer maybe from an excess of intellectualism, and I'm not in the view of the opposite, or reject intelligence or return to primitive tendencies. No, but anti-intellectual intellectuals. Yeah. So the great scholarly works, they have already been produced in philosophy, economics. There are a lot of improvement in the socio-biological sciences, but most of the great works, they have already been produced, and most people they will not spontaneously be interested in the theoretical aspect. It's really for the select few, for the scholars, for the very intelligent people. Yeah. So maybe I will write a book or books, but these will not be a scholarly works. If I write them and publish them, and if I don't, I have decided to lower down the complexity without giving up on an attempt to provide high quality content. But yeah, if I'm honest, I have a temptation really to. That's probably what the boring German metaphysician calls vanity, a selfish desire to be acknowledged as an intellectual. That's a selfish temptation that I have. And I have to struggle against this. Of course, I suffer from vanity and narcissism, and all the people that I have encountered on my path, the best people eventually, the people that I'm intellectually and spiritually connected with, they all share in common that they are really highly intelligent. They have significantly higher than average IQ. They are very knowledgeable, but they are not intellectuals precisely. And in a way, that's good. I'm not in a populist anti-intellectual rant, but they are already scholars in a way. And precisely, the scholars have failed Western civilization, not because of a personal flaw, but there have been exceptional scholars, and I have a tremendous, that's what I said earlier, a tremendous admiration for really great scholars, for the sheer brilliance of their work. Someone like, that's also one of the reasons why I often love the Jews, so some of them at least. Someone like Mises or Rothbard and many others, but people like this, you cannot, if you are honest, you cannot not respect and admire their legacy. And I genuinely do. Yeah, or in the field of evolutionary psychology, of course, someone like David Booth, but others. In economics, someone like Hopper, Hayek, these are intellectuals that I've been interested in, or someone like Ed Dutton in sociobiology, many others. But my world, as an individual, is a world of books and scholars and thinkers and etc. But precisely here, it doesn't apply to Dutton. Precisely, he's kind of a different in a good sense, but the classical boring scholars, here it's not derogatory, but classical intellectuals who produce scholarly works, no matter how great it might be, and often it is, but it hasn't been sufficient to prevent maybe what Spengler calls somewhere in intellectualism, or the dry reason. Western civilization in a way has become, among many other problems, but civilization where empty talk has has taken too much importance. Yeah, I'm not. I don't want to reject intellectual work. No, but precisely the great people that I have encountered on my intellectual path and journey are very intelligent people, sometimes with a scholarly background and training, but they are not classical intellectuals. And precisely that's one of the reasons which makes them great. Because once you get trapped in the competitive arena of scholarship, you become imprisoned in a way, because you have to compete with peers, and there's the search for status, and it becomes limiting, one might say. So yeah, I will try to. I'm not sure that I will succeed because I have failed so many times. But eventually, it will succeed at some moment. I will try to make knowledge appealing and interesting. That was the purpose of what I call cultural Hegelianism, in a way. But precisely, I don't. I will try here. I don't know how it will unfold, but I would like to. Ideally, ideally, I would like, as long as possible, as many people as possible to start research, or at least to start reading on their own, as long as it's possible, without being told, precisely. That's my view in religion, actually. Whether my pagan self or my Protestant self, here I've understood recently that actually Protestantism, actually I knew this already, but it's just the Nordic spirit of independence. That's why paganism and Protestantism, under certain features, they are not incompatible, and actually they are the same. It's just a spirit of revolt in the good sense, of refusing to be domesticated intellectually, and to search for independence and sovereignty and individuality in the noble sense. Yeah, so yeah, I will try to encourage as many people as possible, as long as possible, to be enlightened on their own, because what I enjoy a lot of things when I'm not too depressed, is reading books, and I would like others to enjoy reading books as well. Yeah, yeah. I've had really a negative freak aspect that I still do at some moments when I really become negative. But I will try to let go a little bit. Uh, yeah. My ideal, it's not new in a way, is for as many people as possible to become independent as long as possible. That's my ideal. If they can live their own life without hurting others, or while reducing the damages to the greatest amount possible, living their own life in harmony with others without being told what to do. Actually, that's the ideal. That's why my ideal is what I call the American ideal, because this is where historically it has succeeded the most and the most consistently. Self-ruling, self-governing communities of individuals. Yeah. Not collectivist communities, but communities of individuals. If a country or a state or a nation or a political entity can become a community of self-governing, independent individuals, which promotes the growth, intellectual, spiritual, psychological growth and independence, that's the ideal, actually. Yeah. I needed to talk. I feel a little bit better.